Hello, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Old School English Teacher. Today we're going to talk about the principles behind using a comma. Before we begin, I'd like to share a story that occurred a number of years ago. I had a darling student sitting in front of me. I had just finished reading her paper, which was sprinkled with a multitude of commas. And I gently asked her, "So, explain to me your philosophy behind comma usage." And she said, "Well, I put a comma wherever there is a pause." And I said, "Well, where did you learn this interesting practice?" "Oh, my English teacher taught me to put a comma whenever I pause." And I thought to myself, well, she's half right. Commas do indicate a pause, but there are principles behind the pause. And so that's what we're going to learn. The principles behind the pause, or the principles behind the comma. Let's get started. In my video about the compound sentence, we learned that a comma precedes a coordinating conjunction. For example, I want to stay at a hotel where I have a view of Central Park, but I don't want to hear a lot of traffic. So remember, we have two independent clauses in a compound sentence, and they're joined with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So we know that rule. We have that one down. Let's reinforce that rule with a little student practice. We stayed at the Waldorf Astoria because my husband went to college with the general manager, and he gave us a steep discount. Okay, so look for the coordinating conjunction. And did you find it? Okay, here it is. And is the coordinating conjunction. So if you decided to put a comma between manager and, that is correct comma placement. The second way to use a comma is between a dependent clause and an independent clause, creating a complex sentence. For example, if we go to New York City, can you arrange a hotel room? If signals the dependent clause, and so we want to separate the dependent clause from the independent clause with a comma. Now say we flip this and we put the independent clause first, the dependent clause second. Notice that that subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence. Can you arrange a hotel room if we go to New York City? Notice the absence of a comma when the subordinating conjunction is in the middle of the sentence. Let's do a student practice to reinforce that. While we ambled around the Big Apple, we enjoyed the freedom of not driving a car. Where do you think that comma goes? Note the subordinating conjunction, so that means we have a dependent clause. So at the end of that dependent clause, yes, right here, we're going to put a comma between apple and we. I think you have this. The third way we use a comma is with a semicolon, and we learned that in the video about the semicolon and the conjunctive adverb. And I have an example here for you. I enjoy shopping and seeing Broadway shows, yet this exciting city is very expensive. So we have our independent clause, a semicolon, a conjunctive adverb, and a comma. Remember that formula. Remember that formula. It will never fail you. Yes, there's a pause, but there is a principle behind the pause. Let's do a student practice to reinforce this rule. Our daughter loved climbing up the narrow passageway of the Statue of Liberty. However, those steep stairs made me dizzy. So, this semicolon is signaling that this is a conjunctive adverb, and what's missing? That little comma, because those three travel together. The semicolon, the conjunctive adverb, and the comma. They travel together. Okay, I think you're getting this. All right, the fourth way we use a comma, this is new information. I haven't given you this yet. Use a comma after an introductory word, phrase, or clause. For example, typically I fly coach because I am frugal when using my airline miles. Typically is an introductory word, and so we want to set it off with a comma. Now sometimes we have an introductory clause, and I wrote kind of a long one because I wanted to demonstrate that it can be kind of long, and you want to separate the introductory clause from the main clause with a comma. Even considering the cost, the time, and the inconvenience of flying across the country, New York City possesses an exhilarating energy which everyone should experience. Okay, let's do a little practice to make sure we get it. Frequently, visitors to the Statue of Liberty don't realize they are claustrophobic until they are climbing the tiny stairs to the torch. Okay, do you see where the comma should go? If you said between frequently and visitors, you've got it. Number 5, use a comma to separate items in a series. We can cause a lot of miscommunication with the absence of commas. For example, my daughter became sick on our trip. Her symptoms were a fever, won't-eat diarrhea, rash, and lethargy. So we don't want to make a mistake like this and miscommunicate the real meaning of our sentence. Well, let's see how some commas will clarify and communicate better. My daughter became sick on our trip. Her symptoms included a fever, comma, loss of appetite, comma, diarrhea, rash, and lethargy. We don't have a comma here. I would use a comma here if I needed it for clarification, but it's not needed for clarification in this sentence. Let's have a student practice. During our trip, my husband was a good sport, carrying coats, shopping bags, backpacks, and water bottles. Okay, take a minute. Where might a couple commas go? Okay, if you said between coats and shopping and between bags and backpacks, you know how to use commas in a series of items. Okay, the 6th way that we use a comma is to set apart non-essential words, phrases, or clauses. Now, what we mean by non-essential is it's not essential grammatically. The sentence will still make sense without this little insert here. So here's our example. My brother, comma, Steve, comma, drove his motorcycle from Orlando to New York City. Now, I said Steve because I have more than one brother, and I want this sentence to indicate that it was Steve who drove from Orlando to New York City. And notice how that's set off with commas. Okay, let's do a little practice to make sure we get this. I'm going to read the sentence. While I'm reading it, you figure out where those commas go. Our daughter Emily loved riding the subway with all the rank and file New Yorkers. I think you want to put the comma here, and you've got this. Okay, sometimes comma usage, even when it's correct, can facilitate wordiness. And you're saying, well, what's so bad about wordiness? My teacher gives me a 1,000-word limit that I have to reach on my essay, and if I eliminate all the wordiness, I won't make my word count. Well, wordiness in an essay is like too much perfume, too much jewelry. It's like walking into someone's house and they've got 50 knickknacks on the mantle. It's like walking into someone's backyard and they've got 3 fountains, 6 statuaries, and 4 dozen potted plants. It's too much. And it's the same way with words. Our words need to communicate with elegance and beauty and brevity. If we're not brief and to the point, we make our readers drowned in words, and we don't want to do that. So I'm going to give you an example of how to eliminate wordiness. The New York City interior designer imported her rugs from Turkey, comma, where they were made by hand. This is grammatically correct. The comma placement is correct, but it's wordy. And let me show you how we can reduce that wordiness. The New York City interior designer imported her handmade rugs from Turkey. We took a 6-word phrase and reduced it to a 1-word adjective. And that's what you can do, is replace long phrases with adjectives and adverbs. Let's practice. We ate a delicious pizza, which was organic, at a hole-in-the-wall joint on Columbus Square. This is wordy. Now let's revise it a little bit. We ate a delicious organic pizza at a hole-in-the-wall joint on Columbus Square. Do you see how that flows better? And it's not burdening the reader with wordiness. I want you to practice these 6 comma rules with confidence. Practice, practice, practice. And then one day you can say, I love commas, because there are principles behind the pauses. And I want you to know those principles behind the pauses. The book that I'm recommending is David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. This book is written with enthusiasm and high energy. The thesis of this book is that small and seemingly weak people can take on the mighty. And he gives historical examples from David and Goliath to World War II to the Civil Rights Movement. It's an inspiring book, especially if you are walking the path of the entrepreneur. It is just, he's a great critical thinker and he's a great storyteller. I highly recommend this book. So with that, I wish you practice with those commas and that you become proficient and that you master using the comma. I will have a follow-up video with the 5 remaining rules of comma usage. So work on these so you're ready for the next 5 rules. And with that, I wish you goodbye, good luck, and of course, good writing.